And happy Friday. I'm just fiddling with this new hood that I made, and I obviously haven't worked in the ends yet. It was somebody else's pattern. Hummingbirds are flying. So I can take no credit for it. Well, I can take all kinds of credit for it. I changed, trying to adjust my light here. Starts getting dark pretty quickly right about this time. And there we go. Yeah, so what looked like it was working 5 minutes ago is kind of dark in here. So I bought this because I liked the way it looked. And I mean, I think that's a really cute alternative to a cowl. It was in stockinette, and so you can wear it up like this. Isn't that cute? Well, as you know, I hate anything on my head, but I actually had gotten it because I thought Mitch might like it because he's bald. And so I have to have him try it on. I think it's probably not long enough because he has a bigger head than I have. So I used the stitch pattern I'd used in this cowl. And so now I've got to go to Britex and see what ribbon I bought so I can put it in the hood. And so that was my knitting. I think I started it last Friday and finished it before Christmas. And now I'm working on, here it is. So remember this beast with all the pieces. So I have picked up a different yarn because I just decided this was too much. And so this is, again, somebody else's project, and I'm modifying it. Oh, on the hoodie, she had a turned over trim, and I don't particularly like that, so I changed it. But I did like the way she did 2 double knitting rows before. Hi, Iris. Hi, Anne-Marie. Did you guys have good holidays? Yeah, I like the 2 rows of double knitting before binding off. And you can see I ran out of the darker yarn, so I finished off with the silk. I think that came out pretty well. So it makes it, I mean, it's still really flexible. But pulls it in just a tiny bit. So anyhow, have to get yarn to run up the stitches. So the next thing I am working on is I took some yarn that I'd bought in Paris when we were there for my 65th birthday. Well, I'm now 71. So I decided it was time to do something with the yarn. And it's a little bit more my colors than this, and I've got a bad stitch marker. So remember this with all the loops and the edges and everything. So I'm re-knitting it because my patience for adjusting this was running out, and I felt like it would be better if I just started fresh. So people always say, what are you going to do with, that thing that you're not using, or your swatch or whatever? And I'll tell you, in this case, it's going right into the recycling because I just don't feel like fussing with it. And so that's what I'm going to do. I'm just getting rid of it. And it will go to Ridwell because they occasionally collect textiles. And so Nicole, my cleaning person, saves everything up. And when they say that that's going to be in their next pickup, she throws it all in. And so I'm looking a little shaggy. Is it freezing there, Iris? It's been cold for us here, but I went out today. It was actually pretty nice. The sun was out, and I only ended up with one glove. So I walked around with one hand in my pocket. And so here we go. And I'm throwing it right into the recycling. So as much as I like to, use and make sure that I'm being a good steward of yarn, there are times when you just need to throw shit out. So that has now been thrown out. And many of you may have come to hear about what the hell is a depression biscuit. And I haven't thought of the depression biscuit in years because I don't celebrate Christmas with my family anymore, and it's a family item. So my friend Val, who's a knitter and used to be a costumer, or what they call a draper in the costume shop. So she's the person who figures out the patterns. And then there's a first hand. So this says you will have a happy Christmas, Merry Christmas, and a Happy New Year. So anyhow, we had lunch on Tuesday, and she had this. And so I put it under the Christmas tree because it reminded me of the depression biscuit, which I promised I would tell you about. So I grew up in a family. My dad was a Republican. My mom was a Democrat. And my mother's mother, she didn't live with us or anything, was a diehard FDR Republican or Democrat. And she and my father used to argue politics. And so one year I remember she would come up and visit in August. She lived in San Francisco. And it was during the Nixon-Kennedy presidential race. And she always stayed in my brother's room, which was across the back end of our house. And she, it was August, so we had windows open. And she put a Kennedy sticker on the window on the outside. My father was furious. But it was kind of the first that I knew that there were two parties because my mother just never said anything. And my dad thought everybody agreed with him because he was always talking and thought he was always right because, so you got Anne Marie says everyone is home, but influenza A also joined us. My friend Natalia and her kids and husband came home from a trip and were all sick. So anyhow, Grandma was a real FDR Democrat. And in fact, she worked until 1966, although she was born in 1886. But she worked for the Red Cross in her final working years, and they allowed her to stay on so that she could pay into Social Security for a year and get Social Security. So I'm sure it was the minimum amount you could get. But before then, there was nothing for someone like her, and she was not well off. She was a working person, and, I remember my mom sent her checks. So anyhow, back to the depression biscuit. So it was more the size of, like, a real biscuit, so it was, like, this big, it was puffy, and on the top and bottom, it was, like, darker colored and then white on the sides, just like a biscuit. And so at some point, the depression biscuit came to my mother, and so every year when we were trimming the tree, the depression biscuit was put under the tree, and when we were unwrapping presents, it would rise to the surface at some point, and my mother would always say that so we remember that not everybody has what we have. So, I always felt like it was a really cool thing that we had this depression biscuit, but of course, everybody else just thought we were nuts. Um, and so it went under the tree as long as I can remember, and I may have had it for a while, but I eventually sent it to my older sister, who was kind of the depository of all family lore because she had an attic. Um And everybody knew that I didn't care about stuff like that, so I was not left in charge of it. But so that's the depression biscuit, and I was very tempted at one point over this holiday week to make a new one, um, but then just said, like, "Jill, don't." I made my Christmas tree out of ornaments that we normally put on the tree. But we haven't had a tree for several years, and I'm totally good with that. It's actually me who doesn't wanna get the tree. But, I usually put out, like, bowls of ornaments, that sort of thing, and, so this year, I'd seen a picture of a Christmas tree constructed of books, and then there was lighting, so light flowed out, and I loved it, but I was like, "Oh god," finding the right size books and putting those together would just be the end of the line for me, and, um, and then I'd have to put all the books away. Yeah, so couldn't do that, but the ornaments came out, and I had an idea of how to build the tree, but that didn't work. So my next idea was to take those mesh bags that you get, like, um, lemons or something in? This was probably lemons because it was yellow, and so I saved those because you can sometimes stick a ball of yarn in them, and so I had a 20-inch vase, and I put the mesh over it, and then I used the ornament hooks, which I had to bend quite a bit, um, to hold the ornaments around this vase, and so they would stack on top of each other, and I didn't plan very well, so we have a lot of kind of funky, fun ornaments, and I started just all silver and red because I thought I'd have enough, but I didn't, so the top of the tree is just a jumble of our funky ornaments. I never could figure out how to do like the 6 to 8-inch long things, so those are sitting in vases. Um, and then I put my, a couple of minor decorations out. That's it. Um, Jerry, who lives next door, we're on 4 townhouses. He gets up every year. I'm sure he's 80 now, and puts up lights across our front arbors, and then he's got a little tree, which is generally lit all year long in the evening, but it's just some plastic thing. So, lots of knitting going on. I got kind of bored with Tunisian crochet, so I've kind of dropped that project. And I cast on, so I'll get this. So this is one half of a shawl. It's basically, some close to 100 grams of yarn using this drop stitch pattern. And I have 3 skeins of the yarn. So I started another um, piece, and the other yarn is this. So it's kind of a complement to that. So I'm knitting the other panel, which will be the same size, and then you join them here and attach the short end to the long end, and it's like a poncho thing. So I had one of those, and I've told the story of putting it in the washing machine in Australia, and it shrunk. Um, so it's supposed to be cold tonight, so the hummingbirds are like, doing their last feeds before they go to bed. And that one's pretty small. They guard the feeders like crazy. Um, so I cast on that so that I would have something to knit while I was sitting at doctor's appointments with Mitch. And I see people I've never seen before. So Pamelia, Deborah Mazzarelli, and Corinne Dews. Cool. And Andrew Steele. I hope you're not one of those guys. And um, so what was I saying? Oh, so that's my doctor's appointment knitting. So Mitch has had a gazillion doctor's appointments, and I have to drive him and be there. I generally just sit in the waiting room. I don't usually go in with him, but was called back at one point after I'd told him that I don't appreciate the early morning appointments. So we were consulting our calendars to make a subsequent appointment, and it was last Tuesday. And you end up weighing things out. So it was like, it's nobody's working next week. So it was the last appointments before the holiday. And it was like Tuesday at 9 a.m. and 4 p.m., or it was 8:45 and 4 p.m. I was like, really don't want to do 8 at 8:45. But then I remembered that I had my lunch with Val and Deb, and I said, well, if I do that, I can't have a glass of lunch or a glass of wine with lunch. So we decided to do the early appointment, and I got up early. So what I hate is having to rush in the morning. It's kind of my peaceful time, and I do the dishes from the night before and cut up our fruit, make yogurt if I need to, just, put in loads of laundry, um, putz around in the kitchen if I feel like it. And um, so anyhow, I just got up earlier so I didn't have to rush so much. And now I'm just keeping that knitting bag in my purse, which is huge, and always have some paper in case I get some brilliant idea while I'm out that must be written down. And I have figured out the parking so these are at a satellite hospital and in an office tower next to the hospital, and not a lot of parking in the hospital building. So you have to get there pretty early to get that. But there's a parking garage on the next block, which is connected through the inside. So you just have to figure out where to park so you don't have to walk too far outside. But all the really close, good spots are always gone. So last weekend, I did a little flat pattern drafting, and there's a time lapse video of me doing two of the pieces on my blog on Substack if you want to look at it. So I've been following this person called Kahindi Oni, Oni, and she's a flat pattern maker. And I kind of, always love flat pattern. And I feel like for helicopter going over, for knitters that, we have to do a lot kind of in our imagination, and which is hard for fitting. So for instance, with this hood, well-written pattern, no real complaints with it. Although, I had to change it. But there wasn't a schematic. So, I went through and calculated all the measurements she gave and the stitch counts and everything. But you're still like, you kind of don't know exactly what's going on. I really resent when somebody doesn't do a schematic. It's a second pattern I've purchased recently that didn't have one. And yeah, you will always get called out here because I don't like it. Oh, I remember you. I thought I recognized your name, and it's just Pamela, right? It's not Pamelia. And Kate McDermott. I will admit that I'm not very good with names as I'm getting older. So I have had the idea of using Kahindi's pattern blocks to help people draw their own basic shape, and Lisa Kite. And so I wanted to do a video that showed how kind of fun and easy it is. And so I did a time lapse, and it took me, David Cotton, it took me 10 minutes to do each piece. And for those of you who aren't familiar with flat pattern, so here, I'll show you this one. This is something that I bought. So that's a sleeve. And this has 2, 4, 6, 7 different sizes that you can trace off. And so these are called basic locks. And here's the back. And here's the front. So these do not have darts, which most of our knitting things don't, although they actually should. So from those patterns, I did this years ago. So this is all half size. So these are for my half size dress. And so this one has a dart at the bust and a dart at the waist going up here. And, I even have skirts. Let's see. So this is the same. The back has a dart in the shoulder and a dart going up, pointing towards your shoulder blade. And you can see that the front neck is lower than the back neck. So your back neck is up here and your front neck is here and here. So that and kind of your shape up here are really important for making things that fit. So I'm going to here's a sleeve that has a dart at the elbow, so we never see anymore. And some measurements, because everything is built on measurements. So then I have a skirt with, it shows 2 equal darts. Okay. And then I have, so this is called a princess. So instead of having darts, the darting is all in the seam. So here and up here, with how these get joined, you're building in darts and it creates the same shape. So I kind of love my patterns, and Chikendi's method is really good. It's really clear. You don't need that many measurements, and it's easy to do. As I said, it took me 10 minutes to draft, just roughly draft. And this is called a pattern hook. See, I have a punch that pinches these holes, and then, like in a studio, these are hanging off of hooks or off of a rod, and you can do that to it if you want to make it shorter. So I have a few of these, and now I've drafted a basic block on paper. So the patterns I showed you that are kind of beige those are done on, we call it tag. It's just heavy manila. And I used to have rolls of that to make patterns. So once you get something and you want to reuse that pattern, you transfer it onto tag so that it's more durable. And so I'm going to do a class on that and how to do the fitting that you need. So we will sew together a test sample. And when I say sew together, like I don't really use my sewing machine that much anymore. I will sew one together, but like literally you can use staples or, pattern pinchers, whatever those are called. You don't have to actually sew it, or you can hand sew it. And the whole thing will be about getting a block that works for your body so that you can compare it to a schematic in a pattern. I may be doing this more for myself. If you're a designer, I will show you how to make the changes. Generally, for a knitter or a person doing it, I will show you how to do it for your body. 'Cause it's not hard. It's like knowing all the things that's hard, and I know that. So the other class I'm thinking of offering, these will start in February or March, is resurrecting a system of grading. And doing that, I'm going to do it in modules, so you only have to sign up for what you want. And you can learn how to do different things, how to grade, how to create different sizes while you're writing your pattern, so you don't have to do it all at the end. And it's also useful for tech editors or people who want to help designers right sizing. I'm like half lit and half in the dark. So those are one of the things I've been thinking about. I'm still trying to pound out this pattern that should have been done at the beginning of November. Let's just say life has not been very supportive recently. So for those of you who have attended in the past, Mitch's health is poor, and trying to get we don't know what's wrong with him. It's distressing to have your spouse failing and for medicine to not have much to offer. So we spent the evening on Christmas Eve in the emergency room, and he was able to talk to a doctor today, and they think that what's going on right now is a reaction to changing his medicine. Anyhow, it's hard. And so we didn't really do Christmas this year because we've got too much other stuff going on. And, I did bring in something. Oh, I was going to show you. So every year I get a calendar that I hang on my door. Trust me, it does not help in me operating a calendar, but it's nice to have good pictures. So every year I have to decide what I'm going to get. So this year I got African American art. And so I'm into sustainability and equality and all of that. I love how they did the fabric on this. So it's just a few lines. Just so I love looking at art and seeing how it's done. But so when I do or used to do like the sustainable fashion challenge on Instagram, one of the things that I was very aware of is that A, I'm very white, and B, the things that I buy don't necessarily support minorities. First of all, I don't buy that much, but, I shop local, do all that sort of thing. But, like for fashion, I'm certainly not buying anything like made by Black designers because A, my body isn't right for it, and B, I'm 71 and people are typically designing for much younger people. So kind of realizing that I can't like increase my reach through fashion. I've been looking for other ways. So like I bought some yarn from a dyer who's Black, and but I also thought it would be good to find out a little bit more about Black artists. And we've got a couple of pieces by Black artists, but typically I don't know that much. So since I love art, that's what we're going to do this year. So, the cool thing about a calendar is you get 12 different pieces and you don't have to like them, but they're interesting to look at. And so you may or may not have heard of Jacob Lawrence, who was a well-known painter from the Harlem Renaissance. And he did, I think there's 62 panels called the Migration Series. And at the time that he did them, half were bought by MoMA, I think, and half by the Phillips Collection in Washington, D.C. So they each have 31 pieces. And he died, a decade or so ago. And his wife was also a well-known artist called Gwendolyn Knight, also did. But earlier in Mitch's career, he did a lot of work for the Seattle Art Museum. And I'm not sure when it was, maybe the 70s, that Jacob Lawrence was made a member of the University of Washington Art School. So he taught there, and he and Gwendolyn lived in Seattle. And he was a great contributor when the art museum was raising money to build a new museum. And he's well known around here. So we have a print of his that was given to Mitch. And we've got another print, a lithograph of his that we purchased. There was one painting once, really loved it. I asked how much it was, and it was $30,000. And that was back in the 80s, late 80s. So we passed on that one. We were felt wildly extravagant for spending $5,000 on a piece. So anyhow, we have those two pieces, and we have a couple of prints done by some British Black artists that I love. But I don't know a lot about Black artists. We saw an exhibit of just incredible portraiture. Guy's name escapes me, also dead at this point. I think he was alive when we saw the show. It was in San Francisco. And so anyhow, just that's how I'm going to broaden my horizons in the art world. I'm also reading about women in abstract expressionism within a collection of articles that Mitch has from a course he took on abstract expressionism. And Jackson Pollock, who else would you know? De Kooning, Helen Frankenthaler, who's one of my favorite artists, Joan Mitchell, Lee Krasner, who was Pollock's spouse and is believed to be the driver behind his popularity. I've got a couple of names on the tip of my tongue, and I'm not coming up with an actual name. So it was a movement kind of after World War II and in the early part of the Cold War. And it was really to get away from representational. Rothko was one. Some other big dog. And a lot of them were thought to be communists or socialists, mostly because they kind of lived alternatively. And, expressionism is hard to understand. So Mitch took this class just because he didn't know what the hell it was and thought it would be interesting to find out. And so he was getting ready to throw it out. I said, give it to me. I'll read some of that during lunch. So I'm doing that. I read nonfiction during lunch. And so I'm learning a lot about these women artists, and no one but men would be surprised to find out that they often were more pioneering than the men because they had nothing to lose. No one was hanging their work. It was hard for them to get representation, and certainly few museums were buying their work. So anyhow, Black artists this 2026, I will be thinking of other ways that I can expand my reach, because I think that it's important. And, it's kind of a shame that I'm 71 and really don't know much about Black artists. Um, I subscribe to this kid on Substack who is a historian, and he debunks myths or, confirms stories, which I really like because it all gets down to gossip. Everybody loves gossip. And that's really about all I've got. I'm hoping Mitch is going to be a little livelier tonight than he has the last couple of nights. We've been threatening to watch this movie, but he hasn't been able to stay up. So I think I will have a martini. I had one on Christmas Eve. My friend Nancy and I always FaceTime with our martinis, and fortunately, Mitch decided he had to go to the emergency room before I'd gotten too deep into mine, so I could take him. And sadly, he's not drinking with me anymore, but we'll see. So have a wonderful holiday week and weekend. I'll probably be here next week. This is always a week that I treasure between Christmas and New Year's, where I kind of feel like I can just do whatever I want. And I'm planning things for 2026. But everything has to be planned with an eye on the fact that I have no idea where we're going. And you can see if I take my glasses off that I'm not sleeping well. But I always like to plan. I always like to have new things. A couple of final notes on what I've cooked. So we don't take the New York Times anymore because we don't agree with their how they're presenting the news. And so that was like a big source of my cooking recipes. So I subscribe to American Test Kitchen, which is really great, but I don't think their seasoning is really good. So I have to step in and do my own. So a month or so ago, I did their roasted chicken, which is just fucking unbelievably good. And so the last chicken I got, I spatchcocked it, which means that you can lay it out flat, and cooked it that way, and which I really liked. It was a lot easier to get an even cooking. And I put a bunch of sage and some butter underneath it. And then I threw it in the refrigerator because we were busy going to doctor's appointments, and Mitch hasn't had a lot of appetite. So I thought from that chicken, I will make a chicken pot pie for Christmas. And never made one before. Not my kind of thing. It was beautiful. It not only came out looking like the picture, but it tasted great. Again, I think I'd add a little bit more seasoning. And I remembered this morning that I forgot to put the half and half in the gravy. it didn't need it. It was delicious. And so I used all the chicken in that, but then you have the bones because I used a whole chicken, so I threw those into a pot with all the skin and everything, and have been simmering a pot of chicken stock, and I made cinnamon buns, which were delicious. I did not put the glaze on top because it seemed like there's plenty of sugar in the cinnamon sugar thing, and I wanted them to have raisins, so I, pulverized raisins in the food processor and added that to the sugar. It was really delicious, and, the dough was like a brioche dough. So I made croissant. They came out pretty good, but not as flaky as they should have, and so now I'm reading all the comments to figure out what went wrong, and it appears that a lot of it's just technique, and you just have to keep trying. People say it's like the third time's the charm, so I'll be making those again at some point, and I thought those might be really good with some, um, of that raisin sugar thing in it. Um, and I have, basically no other cooking plans. I made some cookies, but Mitch is really not interested, and, um, there could be a cheesecake in our future. So that pretty much covers what's going on here. And now it's time for the music hour and a half because it's Friday. And I'm going to go back to my pattern, which I think it's got like 400 fillable fields in it. Just putting those in is just so fucking tedious. And you always find a fucking mistake when you're doing it. So I've got this 45-page document. I've got 3 errors that I found, and I still have to label all the fillable forms, which then correlate to my PHP thing. So that's what I'm doing. I want to have it done by Monday because I really want to have my life back. And of course, I have new things to put in the pattern daily, so I need time to do that. I'm going to write a post about letting go of some things, both physically and psychologically. So I think that'll be my topic for next week. And I will see y'all on Substack. Bye.